Thank you so much, Mahima. And thank you so much, Faiz. Welcome to this session. I'm really looking forward to an insightful discussion with you. So, Faiz, let's just cut to the chase. You've been around for like close to 20 years now in the industry. And this narrative, this entire inclusivity narrative has been panning out over these years. So, from where you are, how have you seen it evolving at the workplace? And given that you're here because you feel very strongly about it. So, why do you feel so strongly about it? It would be lovely to hear that from you.
Firstly, thank you so much that you thought I was worthy enough to have this conversation. Genuinely happy and privileged to be a part of this conversation. So thank you for inviting me. I know we've spoken about this in person as well. So it is, of course, a topic and a subject that's close to our heart, and which is why we're probably having this LinkedIn Live series. 2 decades now, since a little over 2 decades, actually, since I've been in the industry. And I think I started to see a lot of things change for the better. I know there's a sense that everything that's happening only now, a lot of people assume that things have started to change only in the last couple of years. I think there's been a lot of change which has happened over the last many, many years. Even the college I studied in, I was always surrounded by friends, women friends, who are obviously way smarter than most of us. A lot of them doing really well for themselves in their life today. So a lot of my opinions, thought processes have been shaped actually from what I saw at home, as well as what I've seen with my friends in school and college, and predominantly college. Having said that, I got into the tech industry, and within the tech industry, I got into the business side of the tech industry. And what I saw was we were always did not have enough women on the floor consistently. For every 95 men, there were probably at best 5 women. In some cases, even a lot lesser, probably for 98, 99. So it was a very, very overwhelmingly male-dominated business. And I think that has slowly started to change over a period of time. I think that has a lot to do with a lot more women, actually doing a lot more STEM courses. So there's a good change. There's a lot more conversation around this topic. It's no more just a good to have tick mark conversation as it was probably 15 years back or 20 years back. But having said that, while a lot of things have gotten better and there are lots of good examples that we can all look around, I still think we've got a massive way to go to get this to where it truly deserves to be. I don't think, in the real sense of the word, we've achieved as much as people would have liked 2 decades back. If 2 decades back, advocates like yourself, allies like me, would have said, this is where we want to be in 2020 or 2025, quarter of a century has gone by, and I don't think we are where we should have been. So there's a lot more heavy lifting to be done. That is what I'm committed to play my own small little role going forward. But we have a long, long way to go.
So when you said that there were just 5 women out of 100 who were there,
Yeah.
there was this sense I could feel that you were missing out on something. So let me ask you a provocative question. What's wrong with 95 men and just 5 women?
It's and probably back then I didn't realize, but now what I've come to realize, when you spend time, it's very evident that when you have people from different backgrounds, different genders, just different cultures, you get so many more opinions that are valid. When you've got uniformity, uniformity does not drive innovation. Uniformity does not drive a lot of things it should ideally drive. And I just think, purely from the perspective of having more meaningful conversations, from having conversations which would lead to better decisions and eventually better results, you need people from different backgrounds, different genders. And this is proven beyond doubt that when you've got women on your team, you've got women in leadership roles, there are a lot of other aspects that most men don't think about that come in the forefront. So that's predominantly what I've been missing out on. Having said that, there's also a very clear-cut case where you've come to realize with time that what one assumed many years ago, that women may or may not thrive in such roles and opportunities, they've absolutely smashed those myths. Today, and I don't have data to back me, but I'm saying something I see every single time. And I spend about 20 days a month flying around different parts. And there's one thing which always makes me very happy is when you fly in the Indian skies, more often than not, you see women pilots who are flying you around. And I think that is one unique thing that probably wasn't the case 2 decades back. So if people assumed, and I'm using an example that people like you and me see often, that flying commercial planes, tons and tons of aircrafts flying around, taking passengers, a few hundred passengers on every plane every single time, and that's being predominantly driven and led by women. That's a clear sign that a lot of it has changed, right? So I think that's where it becomes truly something for all us to see and be proud of. So that's one example of an industry.
What you said is so true. One is about the difference in perspective that different genders bring to the table. That's actually the reason why. The other is also about representation, that if a woman wants to be there, why can she not be there? So there's a question of, what should I say, right-based approach, I would say, that if a woman wants to be there, we have to create a situation so that it's possible for her to be there and thrive. Both.
I'm going to give you a beautiful example, which is very personal to me. And I got to see this firsthand and I got to hear more of it firsthand. So when COVID started around 2020, March or April, there were certain localities in town where it was very difficult to restrict the crowds. The crowds weren't understanding the magnitude of the problem, why they need to stay indoors. And there was this assistant commissioner of police who was a women assistant commissioner. And she was the only one who could successfully walk in to different houses, talk to those local leaders, spokespersons of that community, and get them to actually refrain from going out and behaving like nothing's wrong. So eventually, sometimes, again, what would you assume? Police is a male-dominated role. But here's an example of somebody doing what the male police officers could not do successfully. So again, would she be perfect for all other situations? Who knows? But as far as that situation was concerned, she really did far better. And that's exactly, these are all little examples that I know of. And these are all things which shape my opinions.
So one thing I should congratulate and commend you, that, it's only when we make these small observations in life that we actually build perspectives for ourselves. When you're flying, you see a woman who's a pilot. When you read a piece of news and you find a woman who succeeded to do something which you think another man probably would have struggled because of the social norms, it's not because of the ability that we're talking about, that you realize that we live in a very complex world. It's not just about plain brute capability that we're talking about. Everybody is placed in a certain context, whether it's a workplace or the social place. So therefore, having representation from all segments of society has to be good. I mean, it has to work out. So I had one thing which I have been, so I keep on mentoring younger women fairs and conversations. So some things that I've heard from some domains, IT being one, also sales and business development, the ones which are customer facing. I hear and women tell me that a method to develop camaraderie between men is by using language which is a little rough, can get mildly abusive, and as soon as, suppose, it's a group of 5 or 6 men conversing, and a woman walks in, they find themselves in an uncomfortable situation because socially we are using bad words in front of women is not acceptable. Women also do not take it kindly. So there are two things which can happen in this. Either women take on the same role and start using bad language, probably not the best of situations because she's also a caregiver at home. And, as Thir, the company that I run, we've got helplines and we've had, men calling in and saying that my children have picked up the language that I use. What do I do? My wife is so upset with me. So that's not a situation that we would want to give to women. So you've been in the industry long enough. Now, tell me, what do you read of the situation? How do we make it more inclusive for women?
I just want to go a step back. I think firstly, in the professional world, in the professional domain, I just don't see the reason to use profanities in the first place.
So you're saying that it's not the right thing to do, actually?
Oh, absolutely. I think it's a no-brainer, right? And this is not just about having women in the team or not having women in the team. I'm of the opinion that you don't need to use it at all. Even if I'm talking to my colleagues who happen to be men, I just see no reason why I need to use it. I'm no saint. It's not like I've not used it in the past. But I think I've come to a stage where not just me, I think my bosses, I'm shaped by people who do not use profanities. I must confess that, it's not like I'm the only good guy over here. I think the people I've reported into over the last 2 decades, I think most of my colleagues that I work with, majority of my colleagues, overwhelming majority, my current boss, I've never seen or heard them, even outside of regular boardroom, meeting room conversations, not use it. So I think it's not about women here. It's just about how you carry yourself at work. Because at the end of the day, you want to carry yourself in a way which is professional, which is respectful. So I don't think it's a man-woman thing. But having said that, I agree with you. In a lot of industries and a lot of teams, it's the sense that I could say a lot of things and they wouldn't mind, and I become awkward the minute there are women around, right? I've also heard of cases where women say, oh, you know what, it's so awkward for me because all of the men go out for a smoke break and I miss out on all the conversations that matter because I don't happen to be a smoker. But I've also started to hear that today where men who aren't smokers aren't complaining, for example. But the good news is it's changing. I think people are getting the logic. Now, there are two extremes here. Now, you can pick up the bad habits because you want to be a part of that group, or you can very politely tell someone that, hey, you know what, I don't appreciate the language in places where it happens, because I don't want to be naive enough to say I'm sure it doesn't happen anywhere else. So to a large extent, I don't think it happens. And as far as I'm concerned, as far as the people I worked with around are concerned, I just don't think it's like saying, is it okay to have violence in sport? It's a no-brainer. You can't have violence in sport. Virat Kohli shouldn't be bumping that guy on his way out. It's just unacceptable, right? I love Virat Kohli, but he shouldn't be doing that. It's as simple as that. And likewise, I may love someone, but that person can't be loved and be abusive on the same side. It just doesn't work that way. So it's a no-brainer as far as I'm concerned.
Great. So I've heard you say two things, two very important things. One, you're calling out and saying profanities are not on. It's a no-brainer. So that's if it's a part of one's life, one needs to work oneself out of it. If in case you're leading teams where you're using it yourself, probably you need to take a look at your own language and behavior. That's one. And the more important part, since it's G100 and we're talking about women and for women, I think it's very important for women to understand and learn how to respectfully I shouldn't say stand up. It's not like standing up to something. Respectfully share your opinions about how you feel when others are using language which makes you uncomfortable in a manner which is not judgmental, moralistic, friendly, but at the same time firm and assertive. Is
and again, I'm just going back to examples, right? This is about 20 years back. I just started my career and I wasn't party to this conversation, but I heard the conversation. There was this colleague of mine, very young girl, just like me back in the day, probably in her early 20s, just started off her career. And her boss and a couple of other seniors would always walk out for their smoke breaks. And this happened in front of me where she said, hey, you know what? Every time you guys walk out, I miss something important. So can you make just one promise to me that please go? I'm not a moral science teacher to stop you from doing anything, but when you go out, can you all please not talk work or not talk about something that's important for me to know as well? And I remember she said that, and they just got it. It didn't even occur to them, to be fair, that they were doing something that wasn't cool. And they heard it and they said, you know what, you're right. We're sorry. And we do better. So there are also people who probably just don't know better because feedback's never been given. And when it's said politely, it's said in a way which isn't condescending, it gives people a chance to improve as well.
Thank you so much. I think that's a brilliant example.
Yeah.
A host of women listening in and who probably come and listen to this conversation would take a page out of this conversation, because this is said in such a playful and nice manner that it, number one, assumes that the other person is probably not aware that I'm getting upset.
Yeah.
It's a very important part of empathy from women's side also. All men are not out there to make you uncomfortable. They know no better. So if in case you point it out to them, they'll get it.
Exactly.
They'll get it.
Spot on. Yeah.
So I think it's very, very important. And I've always said that all my life, that if we know how to speak up if we know how to disagree in an agreeable manner, many of the problems that we complain of at the workplace can actually be sorted. So very nicely. Thank you so much for articulating both the things. The other things, since you run a P&L, it's a business, and if there are say many women in there, and a bunch of women take 6 months off for maternity, how do you look at this absence of women from the work As a businessman, how do you what do you say to yourself when this is there, and what do you think we can do so that these women come back and get integrated in a seamless kind of a manner? So you could answer in two parts. The first part is, I would want to hear from you as a businessman, how do you see this phenomena? Because oftentimes I have, you must have also seen, men are cagey about hiring women who are at an age where they might want to start a family, thinking that, oh, my, she go away for 6 months. What do I do then now?
Yeah, their loss, honestly. The men who think that way, shame on them, their loss. But having said that, there are two things. One is I'm long-term greedy, and I'll tell you what I mean by long-term greed. If you're looking at it from the prism of just short term, oops, that person's going to be missing in action for 6 months or even up to 12 months, right? Many times.
Absolutely.
And that's like, this is not good. But if you're looking at having people on board for a longer period of time, then you know what? The 6 months and the 12 months is not going to kill you. You're going to get someone who's going to go do what they do, come back, and be motivated enough to do a great job for the company. We have this colleague of mine in my Singapore office reporting into, it's part of my team. She's been on 2 maternity leaves now in a span of 3 years. She, if I'm not mistaken, is one of our top performers this quarter, or will end up as a top performers. Now, she's been on maternity leave twice. And does it cause some kind of disruptions? Yes, it does. Of course it does, right? I'm not going to be try to make it all sound like everything's picture perfect. Of course it causes a disruption because you don't have backfills. But having said that, she's come back and she's back with her A game, and she's absolutely worth the wait. And she's come back saying, you know what? I love this company because you guys were so cool about it, and I'm going to give it my best. And boom, we're back to where we always wanted to be with her. She's doing extremely well. Again, I think it's about coaching, right? It's talking to people. It's talking about, firstly, when you're interviewing people, how do you ensure you're not biased? How do you not ensure your subconscious biases come in? A very dear friend of mine, she was with Nutanix for many years, and she's moved on to do greater things elsewhere. So the first thing she told me in the interview was, Faiz, just so you know, and I didn't even ask, I don't intend to have kids. And I'm like, hey, why are you telling me this? She's like, hey, you know what? Because in the past, people have felt that I could go away on maternity leave, and I think it's kind of hindered my prospects. So I had to quickly clarify, saying, firstly, I didn't ask. Secondly, it's not something we consider, and we're very conscious about that. And she came on board, she worked, she did really well for herself, and she's gone on to do better things. So there are also cases where people probably have faced that and have brought it out, and we keep talking about it. We keep educating our colleagues. I've gotten educated as to what to speak, not speak. Keep your subconscious biases away from interviews or just other general decision-making processes, right? So in Nutanix, on my team, we've got quite a few women who've gone, taken long maternity breaks, and not just the 6-month mandated ones. A lot of them have spent many months beyond that because we also give them the opportunity to work from home. And there's so many other aspects that come into play. And we've been very, very open to that, and rightly so. So as I said, long-term greed, letting people figure out why a certain candidate is important for you on a 5-year horizon, as opposed to a 1 year, and then you won't worry about these little breaks in their career. That's one. The second aspect is when you're hiring new candidates, career breaks. I don't care about career breaks. And again, these are all people are like, so trying to quickly cover those career breaks. I don't think you need to cover it. You've taken a break, so be it. You took a break because you just happened to spend 3 years nurturing your children or 4 years nurturing your children because you felt that was important to you. It's not like you suddenly lost all your skills because you were on a 4-year career break, right? Or a 3-year career break. So again, it just happens to be with who you're surrounded with, how your thoughts are kind of created. And people who push you to be a better person. None of us are perfect, but the people around you say, Faiz, I think, you know what, have you thought about this, for example? I think you could do this better. I think you could be a lot more open here. And those are all aspects. I thought of career breaks many years back as, oh, why is that person got a career break, man or woman? Now I've reached a stage where I don't worry about career breaks as much.
And you take a break from probably a career, not life.
Absolutely.
So as life pans out, it's a very important part to explore what the person was doing at the time when there was a career break.
Yeah.
Because there are other things, and probably if it's a young mother who's coping with bringing up a baby, probably would have built a host of many other skills which might be absolutely wonderful to the job that she does at work actually. So
You
it's very important to explore during interviews as to what that break was all about, and it's great that you talk about coaching others to look at that perspective, because often we just assume career break meaning, and then we have 1 to 3 options in our minds, and that's what we actually run it in our heads. Fantastic. Then in terms of performances of women at work, now this is something where there are a lot of academic studies, Faiz, and I have no way of actually proving it, but they say that when a performance gets measured, for men, it's always a forward looking thing of what they could do in the future, but women would think that it's all about how they've done in the past, is what the organizations are looking at. Is it? And there could be two reasons. Maybe it is the way women put their performance ahead when they're talking about it, and the way men talk about their careers as they talk about it. And I'm guilty of making sweeping generalizations, but I'm just talking about two kinds of things. What have you seen at the workplace? Have you observed certain ways in women, the way in which women talk about their performance? Is there something they could do better, different? Some trends that you've seen that you would want to put in a word of advice?
Again, I'm speaking predominantly from personal experience. I think women could do a lot better in being a lot more vocal about what they want and what they aspire. I think um, more often than not, you see them being a little more cautious with their aspirations. They sometimes may not be happy about it, but they settle playing second fiddle. And I don't think that's the need. And I think, again, while there could be a lot of reasons that could possibly happen, there's a lot of imposter syndrome also with women. Men have it too. I've suffered from imposter syndrome for the longest time as a leader. But having said that, I think there's a lot of those aspects as well. Again, I think it's the allies, it's the men, it's other women who need to actually help out. And I want to make again a sweeping statement, and this may be again not backed by data, and kind of controversial also. I feel that women don't help women enough. I think the confident women in the office does not help the underconfident women in the office as much as they should. And I just so happy that, the G100, for example, and groups like this are working towards driving all of this. But I think in your day-to-day life, I don't think women spend as much as time as they should helping other women thrive in the workplace. So it's a man and woman thing. It's an ally, but I think a lot of allies could also be other women. And I don't think it's as much as I would personally like it to be. It's almost like, I'll give you a simple example, right? And I bring this up pretty often in my own conversations with the team, is we just don't get enough references of other women from our women employees. When we want to hire for new roles, we want to see more references. And we're hoping that we want to get to see a lot more references of women in important positions of power, in important positions coming in from women, because they may have a network where they know more people. But that's seldom the case. And to me, that's an area which also needs to be looked at, which I think isn't focused enough on.
For us, and that's something that we could probably take it upon us and work upon it, because it's an observation.
Yeah.
We're not claiming anything, and I respect that. Would any ideas, Faiz, why it would be like this?
I don't know. I don't know why and why not. And honestly,
Mhm.
don't have an opinion. I'm just sharing what I've experienced. Simple thing, as much as how many references come in. Not enough. Almost very, very few. So to me, that's where the challenge is. How many times are we seeing, again, speaking from personal experience, women walking up and saying, I want to mentor the new girl in the office. Right? These are the little things. And it's also very societal, right? Sometimes men would refrain because they also a lot of us come from backgrounds which can be a little conservative. So men sometimes also
Yeah.
have to get used to talking to women, spending time with women. and vice versa. It works both ways.
Yeah.
So sometimes a man would think like, if I go and say proactively volunteer that I want to mentor her, how would somebody perceive it? So maybe they won't. But if a woman leader or a senior resource uh, offers to volunteer, I think that would be people would be very happy about that. That is something also at some stage we would love to start seeing a lot. I'm sure
Yeah.
it happens. It happens. Maybe in some places it happens a lot. It's just that I felt it does not happen in the circles that I've been a part of.
It might be probably a very good idea from a workplace practice perspective that we could pool in coaches and mentors and say that if you're interested in doing it,
Yeah.
volunteer, and we'll
Yeah.
tag you to somebody so that this responsibility of picking the mentee doesn't lie on the shoulders of the mentor. So then it makes absolves him
Exactly.
or her of any. So that
So
could be a
true.
nice,
Yeah.
nice initiative to take in actually. So you think there are enough role models for women leaders?
Oh, I think so. Of course there are. I think there are lots. I think you just need to look around. And when I say women role models, it need not be the usual names, the Kalpana Chawlas of the
No,
world,
no, no. I
the
meant at the
Indra
work. I
Nooyis,
meant
and
at the
I mean,
workplace.
everyone throws those names around. I think there are enough when you just look around because they could be, and these need not just be leaders, for example, right? This could be just people doing roles that you typically don't perceive them to be doing. Like I'll give you Nutanix as example, and I'm very proud of Nutanix because our CFO is a woman, Chief Financial Officer in an American company, and those roles are typically not associated with women
Mhm.
and women of Asian or South Asian origin. So
Oh.
that's pretty cool. Our CMO is a very strong leader. She's her name's Mandy, someone I really look up to. Our CHRO is. So we've got senior leaders, super senior in the C-suite, in extremely important positions of high responsibility power where they're actually calling the shots. Our SVP for SaaS engineering is someone that I look up to as well. Her name is Kathy Chow. So she's again someone who's, gone out to do really well for herself and really spearhead Nutanix in the right direction. So I see that. So for me, a lot of them are great inspirations, right? Because they're in roles that, again, are not commonly seen in a lot of other companies for starters. Secondly, I just think in and around your circle, you see people who are out there going and making a mark, being extremely active. I think all of that is really really cool to just experience firsthand. And so, can I get inspired by uh, some of the younger talent we have in and around us? I mean, they're not in positions of leadership, but just to see how they go about their jobs, just to see them thrive, to me is inspiring. I don't need to be inspired by someone who's been there, done that for 30 years. I could be inspired by someone who's out of college in the last 3, 4 years and is just excelling at what they do and expressing themselves. And to me, that's like a wow moment. So for me, that's like, wow, you know what? I wish we had more of her on the team.
And it can never be truer than now, getting encouraged by younger people. Look at us, look at me and you, me getting
Absolutely.
inspired by you.
Yeah.
I also think that inspiration is something which is always, usually with most people, going down. So it needs vitamin shots once in a while. So I think that when we showcase women leaders, and probably of the bevy of women that you spoke about, if we take some time from them and showcase them and talk about their lives the way it has been, it becomes a source of inspiration for women who are, probably bogged down by the rest of life as they're going. And then you listen to one conversation or you're a part of one fireside chat and they're like, oh, no, she did it like this and I could do it like that. So I think a lot of showcasing needs to be done
Yeah.
of women leaders because and there's a lot of caregiving responsibilities which women have, and it often
Sure.
takes away some time, and they're like, oh, I'll do this later. Let me deal with this now. So that inspiration for women from other women, we could probably organizationally, systemically provide it more often and on a continued basis might be a very good idea. And what about the men? Do you think that we have enough men as allies, or do you think that we as G100 could do enough to actually get more men to act like allies actively? Because there are sometimes you believe sometimes who don't believe. The ones who don't believe, we need to work with them on a perspective, building perspective. There are some who have the perspective, but they aren't doing enough. So as a body like G100, or probably in your organization, how would you include more and more men into it?
I just think, firstly, the word ally
Mm-hmm.
has been a little overused. So I
Yeah,
think,
yeah.
everyone
Correct.
believes
I
they're,
agree.
yeah,
I'm
everyone
with you.
believes they're an ally, right? Who's going to raise his hand and say, I'm not an ally? I mean, you wouldn't say that. I think the
Hmm.
question is how active an ally is.
Yes.
What are you actively, proactively doing
Hmm.
to make this a better place for women to work in? What is your contribution? You may or may not be in a position of authority, but what is your little contribution out there, right? So, are we doing enough? I think there's a lot more conversation around it. So people are at least realizing that it's important to be an ally. I
Hmm.
need to selfishly, even if I look at this very selfishly, and if I see my colleagues, and I'm talking about the male colleagues and the men colleagues, right? If we just very selfishly need to look at what's needed to to do well for ourselves, well, at the bare minimum, you need to be an ally, you need to provide a safe space, a comfortable space, and you need to do a few bare minimum things. Now, those bare minimum things are good enough, but they're not going to take you all the way. And that is where active allyship comes into play. And that is where you proactively hire, you make it a point to mentor them, you consciously reach out and pick up the phone and speak to them and check if they're comfortable. Um, every single time I spend time with a colleague of mine, any one of them, and I just happen to be having a coffee with them or just generally chatting in a more casual surrounding, I always make it a point to say, hey, I hope everything's okay. I hope you're comfortable here. Is there anything we can do to make this place a better place for you all to work at? So I'm constantly gathering feedback. And you hear these little things which come out of those conversations. They're not really feedback, but these little things, and you're able to read between the lines, or sometimes it's more direct. And you're like, okay, you know what? We need to do a better job of that. Or, oh, you know what? I'm just so happy because there've also been conversations where somebody just said, Faiz, you know what? We all women chat a lot with each other. And there's one thing is that, women feel they love this place for ABC reason. And that's like a wow moment for me. I'm like,
Hmm.
it's not like, oh, we smashed our numbers, we grew 60% year on year. All those are highs. But it's these highs which make you feel really happy, right? Because you've built something where without you having to oversee it, without surveillance, people are behaving in a way that make you proud, right? That's integrity, right? Integrity is how you behave when no one looks at you. And that's when you look at
Kind of.
saying, okay, you know what, this is lovely. That they feel so comfortable that this is the situation. Or if there's a situation, now again, everything I'm telling you can sound great, but when there's a situation where something's not okay, how you act and deal with that situation, you're truly tested on. So if I've seen a situation or a complaint has reached me and I try to brush it under the carpet, everything I've told you for the last 35 minutes is an absolute waste of time. I'm just a two-faced liar. So if I don't act on it when things go bad, shame on me and shame on my tribe. I think the point here is also, do you act when something doesn't go well? And that is where we get
Hmm.
judged. Yeah.
I have one more thing. Let's just put it here that sometimes men do not know how to be that ally because of lack of perspective about probably a woman's life. And let me just explain. Remember, you said, Faiz, that you've grown up in a family, and the way you've grown up, you've seen women the way they are, and your universe creates your reality for you. But very often there are men whose universe might not be including women who are working out there. They find it very difficult to understand where the woman is coming from. I think it's also important for us to therefore help them get that perspective too. And for that, I don't need any coaching program. I'm just talking about open conversations happening inside organizations where women put their perspectives in, men listen in, because it's a whole new world probably for them also. Like I would tell you, there are many women who are told by men that आपकी तो supplemental income है, इतना stress क्यों लेते हो आप? Because that's the way they have seen their own lives pan out. So it's very important for them to actually, I can deride them for speaking like that or talking like that. But underneath, you realize where they're coming from is they just don't get it. So I think that there's enough has to be done for them to actually get it also. Then you can expect them to be actively allies.
This is obviously right. I think what you've brought up is there's so much more depth to this question. I mean, we could speak about this specifically for 2 hours easily, but the reality is you're shaped by your surroundings, you're shaped now. I am very privileged and lucky to be shaped and being brought up in a family where I saw my father, for example, do a lot of things that most other dads didn't do. You know, um, buying groceries, taking us out, helping us with our homework, helping us out in the kitchen. So I grew in a household where that was pretty common. So for me, what wasn't common for others was common for me. So that shaped me to some extent. Older brothers who very active in doing a lot of things that not perceived to be a man's job, so to speak. So that's my personal surroundings. But having said that, I think also the surroundings in the office or in the workspace really.
Yeah.
So if let's say there's someone who walks in and joins us, and this goes back to your older question, and no one's using profanities around him. Even in the toughest conversations, there are no profanities. They're like tough conversations, but there's no profanities. Now, the person who uses a lot of profanities historically is like, okay, this is not okay in this new place. So I think those surroundings shape you. How you talk to others shapes you. Do you make stupid, casual, sexist statements when you're drinking or having dinner with your friends or colleagues in the evening? When they don't see all of that, even the guys who are used to doing that realize that, you know what, this is not acceptable anymore. So how you carry yourself is shaping others. Point number
Very
one.
true.
So I think
Absolutely.
one is obviously your upbringing. Now, I can't do much about anybody's upbringing. I mean, they're going to be, India's got 1.4 billion people. God alone knows where that person comes from, what background. And today, the urban population is scaling with people from so many diverse backgrounds. You have no clue what background the person comes from, and to some extent, it's irrelevant in the workspace. But the situation created in the workspace drives a lot that you want to be driven. And quickly calling out, hey, that's not cool. When someone says something which is a bit of a loose statement, you're like, hey, you know what? That's not cool. You don't need to again yell and scream and do exactly what. Just simple stuff like, hey, that's not cool. Don't do that or don't say that. Uncalled for. Respect is built. And others around them also get the message that this is not appreciated in this workplace. That's one. The other point, right, is there's just so much more to be done overall as a society. And that will take its own sweet time and that will happen. And again, groups like yourself will obviously build that over a period of time. And that's exactly what we want at a larger scale. But what we could do on our own in our little groups, I think is far more impactful for those groups. So let's focus on those groups and not worry too much about stuff that we can't control.
Absolutely. So one thing is workplaces. I work in the realm of public health. Workplace is a public place. So when you are making a change there, you're actually making a change in the larger society. So it's not small, it's a very big thing. Where I was coming from is that behaviors will change. When they see leaders behave in a certain way, behaviors will change because everybody is looking up to the leader and trying to behave like him because you want to fit in. And then probably they fake it till they make it. What I was thinking is that at times these people also need empathy for somebody to come and tell them that this is not cool because probably where you come from it was and that was okay over there, and have a conversation empathetically rather than just because I have seen a lot of that also happening. So we don't want people just acting right. We want them to actually be right. And as you said that, and I'm hats off to you because in leadership coaching, that's all that we try to do, is that if you put your act together, everything is okay then. It's actually how you conduct yourself is what will impact the most. Your saying is not going. It's same with like parenting, right? Your children behave the way you are. They don't do what you tell them to do. It's as simple as that.
And it works both ways, right? Um, it also works when something that is being said about a male colleague is not okay.
Absolutely.
correct that too, because I ask
Oh,
that as well, because sometimes again loose comments are made. And I'm
yeah.
like, hey, and it's not just about women. You also want to quickly correct the saying that's not cool either.
Yes,
Basically, while I know this conversation and the emphasis, but I think the larger picture is, do you just call out anything which is inappropriate?
absolutely. So let me
And
just,
that is, yeah, yeah,
I'll give you an example, and which this is about. So, as you said, this is not something to do with genders. It's about a behavior, and we need to call this out. So, I'm talking about a very large consulting house in this country. One a man who was a woman was making passes at him, and he did not like it. He went and complained to HR, and the lady in HR said, "पर तुम्हें तो मजे ही आ रहे होंगे." Now,
huge problem. And
there's
it's
a
the
huge
reality of
problem there.
life. Yeah.
Exactly. There's a huge problem there. So this is not about calling out what do you say, men or women. It's calling out the wrong behavior at the workplace. That's what, and we need to do it with everybody, whoever does that. Okay,
Unfortunately,
so
been there, done that. It's unfortunate. I've gone through that too. And it's
you
typically laughed at. Yeah.
I know that, and it's important for us at a forum like this to call that out too, because this is not about men versus women. We are good versus bad. We
Yeah.
are about that which is psychologically safe versus that which is unsafe. That's what we're
Yeah.
talking about. So let me ask you a question, which mostly men get asked, but women get asked and men don't. How do you manage your work-life balance?
I don't manage it as well as I like. I certainly have no expectations of people working 70 hours and 90 hours. I'd love people to stare at whoever they wish to stare at, including television screens and mobile phones. They can stare at whatever they want on weekends for all I care,
Mhm.
contrary to some of the statements being made lately. Uh,
Mhm.
I just think work-life integration matters more than work-life balance. We live in a world where I cannot possibly do a 9 to 5 job anymore. I work on different time zones. So I would be sending emails which may be at odd hours to people. My late evening could be somebody's midnight. And what I keep telling my team is, please don't read the email. I mean, you'll get emails at whatever hours, right? Respond to at a time that makes sense for you, which is within your comfort boundaries. Just because I sent you a mail at 11 p.m., I probably was sitting jobless in an airport lounge and I decided to wrap up some emails. But just because I sent it at 11 p.m., I don't expect you to respond that evening itself. As far as I'm concerned, it's pretty simple, right? If I want to go and watch a movie on a weekday, I would do it if time permits. I wouldn't wait specifically for a weekend, and I wouldn't feel guilty about doing that because there could be
Mhm.
weekends I'm traveling or working. So as
Mhm.
far as I'm concerned, I would do what works for me because I don't, and this is not just about me. This is exactly what I expect of my team. So if there's someone on my team, and I'm not even saying leadership roles, I'm saying someone new in Nutanix who's a part of my team says, I want to watch a movie at 4 p.m. on a Wednesday, I'm perfectly fine with that because there's a good chance that person's working at 8 p.m. on a Friday because a proposal needs to go out, or at 2 p.m. on a Saturday because some important proposal needs to go out first thing Monday morning. So the same logic applies. So it's work-life integration. Find your own logic. Um, I don't advise much on this because I have a long way to go in doing a better job myself. But everyone needs to find their own safe spaces to go and do what best works for them. But one thing I'm very, very clear on is I'm not going to call people and disturb them on weekends. And I don't want to be disturbed on a weekend either unless and until a house is on fire. So that's the simple logic. So people expecting people to work 6 days a week and 7 days a week and saying that weekends is a Western concept. Well, the person who said that was wearing this lovely t-shirt. So even t-shirts are a Western concept. So I find it hilarious when they come up with random stuff like that. And if you
What you
want
said
people to
so
work
true.
weekends, please pay them for those kind of jobs as well. You can't pay somebody for 40 hours or 48 hours and expect them to work 90 hours.
Mm. And it's a very, what should I say? It's a way of looking at human beings as human resources. And I find that actually violating the entire spirit of humanity. And that's what upsets me about these things is actually that when you look at people just as machines to deliver on something, that's
Yeah.
not right. I mean, so post-pandemic, work has become hybrid. The boundaries have actually blurred much more than so when you say, do you think it's worked for you or it has affected in ways that you wouldn't have liked? How could hybrid be the best way for the future? Because it's here to come. I mean,
Yeah, I
so
think
in terms of your management style, Faiz, tell me this, because
I
I
think for
can.
me,
Hmm.
I'm taking this call from my house. I'm in
Yeah, I
Bangalore.
could.
I have a beautiful office
Hmm.
in Bangalore. I could be doing this from the office. I just think it's a waste of time for me to sit in Bangalore traffic in a car for 1.5 hours to reach my office. I'm a lot more productive working from home. And each to their own. I luckily have a space in my house that I can work comfortably. Somebody may want to prefer working in office. That works for you. Now, hybrid is here to stay, and hybrid will last for a very, very long time.
Hmm.
I can speak for my company. We have mandated a couple of days of work
Mm-hmm.
to be in office, not all 5 days, because we think a couple of days is good enough to meet your teams, mingle, and drive innovation. I
Hmm.
think people do a good job and efficiency does not take a hit. Productivity doesn't take a hit. But maybe when you don't see people at all physically, you don't spend time in a teaming format, innovation sometimes can probably suffer. And I use the word probably because, again, I'm not backing this with data, right? So I think to drive more innovation and companies like us who want to drive a lot of innovation on a day-to-day basis, it's good to have people inside offices. And it also, there's something special about meeting and working with colleagues. We don't want the new generation to miss out on this concept called colleagues, which otherwise you get completely alienated by just sitting in a home in this closed room all the time. So I think it's here to stay. I think it's great. I particularly think it's great for people who have things to take care of at home. That is very difficult when you're in an office 10, 15, 20 kilometers away. So I think it works both ways. So personally for me, and I speak only for myself and I'm not representing my company here, um, I don't expect my team to be in office or not be in office. I'm just perfectly fine wherever they are, as long as the job's getting done.
Faiz, you think hybrid is also a lot about trust building that managers have to do with their people, because in the absence of that, it can actually then prove to be a problem, because in the presence of trust, then you don't micromanage, you're not suspicious about people, because that's what we have in our work scene, which leads to a lot of bad blood and people saying that, work from home has just become a reason for people to take off without taking official leave and stuff like that. So I want you to talk to us about how do you actually manage performance.
Yeah. So I think there are enough metrics to measure performance. So
Uh-huh.
performance obviously gets measured very easily, and you know if someone's doing a good job or not and needs help. Um, Firstly, we're not, working with school children. We are working with adults.
Hmm.
So if you're hiring someone, you inherently trust them to do a good job. And for those who don't do a good job, and you will always have a small percentage of people who take advantage of situation.
Hmm.
You
Hmm.
have to deal with those people. But just because 3% or 4% or 2% of the workforce take advantage of working from home, you cannot penalize the 95, 96, 97% who are doing a good job. So I think you've got to weigh your pros and cons. Unless and until there's data which says 50% of the staff is not doing a good job because they happen to be unsupervised in an office, right? Or not in an office, then you've got to look at it very differently. Data so far does not actually say that productivity took massive hits because people happen to work from home. And on the contrary, I thought the overall world organizations globally did a great job of doing what they had to do remotely working from home. I mean, remember, there were many people who didn't have
Absolutely.
high-speed internet connections and they made things work. So yeah. So I personally believe that it's important to trust people fundamentally and go and build a relationship of respect basis that. And for those who misuse it, I'm sure you have ways to course correct or to penalize them for it.
Hmm. Deal with that. Yes, true. I
Yeah.
love the fact that you said that it's 5 to 10% who probably misuse. You don't need to take punitive action against the
The
rest of
remaining
them who are
90, yeah,
probably.
absolutely.
Does make sense. So we've got a couple of questions which have come in, and Shalini over here, Shalini Chopra, who's also the India chair, is saying, "What do you think stops men from calling out other men when they are being sexist in their communications and choices?" Given one we've had recently in the past, there's enough of calling out that's happening post the event, though. But
Yeah, I think firstly, it's shameful if you don't call it out. Let's also not try to sugarcoat anything. If there's bad behavior and you don't call it out there and then, I think it's just terrible behavior. So you've got to
hmm,
call out the fact that you're not calling out someone, right? I think that's really,
hmm.
really bad behavior. And I just think it's coaching. It's coaching again from leaders, men telling their other leaders or their friends or their peers that, hey, this happened without taking names. And this is exactly what I did. A lot of times people don't know how to react. It's just like how, you always hear about women saying, when that got said, I just went numb. I didn't know how to react to it. And that's why I spoke about it 1 year later, 6 years later, 2 months later, or 2 days later, because it sometimes, even in
Yeah.
regular conversations, you're like, I wish I said this while I was there, but you went back and you absorbed what you said. And so same logic with men, they just sometimes, and I'm not trying to play it down, which is why others around them need to say, hey, you need to call this out now. You didn't do this while the meeting happened. You know what? It's not too late. I know you've lost a day. I still think you should pick up the phone and call that gentleman and say, hey, this was not done and this is what it is. So you can, or I always say this, when in doubt, speak to someone. I always tell this to constantly, when you're in doubt, pick up the phone and saying, hey, this happened. I'm not sure how I feel about this. Do you think I should report this? And I'm like, hey, even I'm not sure, but I think let's take in our HRBP into this call and discuss the situation and then let them figure out what's the right thing to do. Because, hey, I have two girls. My older one is 10 and my younger one's 2. Hopefully, by the time they start working, I want this place to be a much better place for them. And I want to be the father who set an example, not just at home, but also at the workspace. So I would do everything in my case. And without you having children, you got to go and build a better place. But I think a lot of it happens when you go and reach out to people and raise the situation there and then. Because a lot of people are judging you on how you behave and speak when that happens. Because again, as I said 15, 20 minutes back, everything I said today, but I don't act when there's a problem, the last 60 minutes is just whitewashing them.
True that.
You got to call it out. It's a no-brainer. And talk about it often. Let people know that this happened and this is what you did. You
Yeah.
don't need
Yeah.
to. So a lot of times people may have done the right thing, but they don't broadcast it. I think especially in situations like this, you need to broadcast it because you want other people to know that this is what you did and that seemed to be the right thing to do. So just like you speak about all the cool things, I won this large deal, I closed this great thing, I bought a fancy car. I think add this to your badges of honor and saying, hey, this tough situation happened and I stood up and I did the right thing. That's a badge of honor too.
So there's somebody who's asking that there are mentors and coaches at the workplace, but then
Yeah.
there are women who outside of the workplace
Yeah.
and are struggling to come back.
Yeah.
What can we do? And probably there's an opportunity at G100 for us. What can we
Yeah.
probably do to have them come back to work? Because they are seeking opportunity, but then they have this wall of have been out of work or there's been a career break. Do you think that we could do some initiative as G100 around that? Could we do some talking around the industry?
Yeah, I think for starters, can they get mentors who can help them build their resumes, who can help them get them upskilled? A lot of times you may be out of work, you may be very smart, you may have had a great past, but are you upskilled? Because you may have been away for 5 years and have you, you know, simple example, are you aware of what's going on AI? Not rocket science, but have you just upskilled to know what's happening because you need to be employable in 2025 or 2026. So I think having mentors, reaching out to people. I know a lot of people who reach out to me, say on LinkedIn, absolute rank strangers, never heard of them, have no clue who they are. And people do help. I mean, yeah, it's like cold calling, right? You may write to 5 people that you want to have a chat with. 4 may not even respond, or 3 may respond, and 2 may not have the time for whatever reasons, but that one person may actually find the time to help you. So I always say this, what's the worst that can happen if you ask for help? The worst that can happen is that he didn't respond to you or she didn't respond to you. That's the
Yeah.
worst that can happen. If that's the worst that can happen, go ahead and do it. You have nothing to lose. So I just think you need to ask for help, be a lot more proactive, but upskilling would be very critical. And how G100 and people like us, and just generally, what can we do to upskill such people who are going through career breaks? I think is something which needs a lot more thought. It's about how well you execute this.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Intentions need to actually lead to action. That's where the full
absolutely.
challenge actually
So
lies.
true.
I think this is 4 o'clock, Faiz.
Yeah.
I've had a fantastic conversation and thank you so much for two things. One, you've made terrific points for women things that they could do actually to better their lives. Those were wonderful. And there were some great things that you spoke about. For example, long-term greedy that you spoke about, how leaders need to view the situations as, which would lead to probably changes at the workplace, which would make it a lot better and inclusive for women. So thank you so much for whatever you're doing at Nutanix and how you've stepped out and spoken to us, because this conversation is going to lie here till posterity for people to watch and gain inspiration from. So thank you so much for making the time to come over and do this conversation.
Absolute honor, and just genuinely privileged to be a part of this conversation. And you were a fantastic moderator any which way. So
the privilege was entirely ours too.
Pleasure's
So
mine.
thank you so
Thank you
much.
for the opportunity.